hat. I mean, you didn't go any place without a hat. When I first went to Canada, old Joe Perlov used to write for the Toronto Star, who was a top turf rider up there. He started calling me the Hat. So then I had to live up to the image.
What do you get one everywhere you go? I've seen you in Civil War General and...
Yeah, I love to go into hat stores, and I get quite a few catalogs. And every time I see a hat in there that appeals to me, I get it.
How many hats do you have?
I don't know.
Do you have 100?
I may have that many. I don't make a hobby of it as such, you know, that I have them here, there, every place. I just have my hats around, and I look out and see what the day's like and determine what hat I'm going to wear.
Well, that's fantastic. Now we know the story of Joe Thomas's hats. Let's take a look at some of the stallions.
We've had a tremendous year this year. We've got 4 of the 10 leading sires on the general list.
This is the big man himself, right?
Yeah, there he is. He's been absolutely incredible in what he has done. He's just absolutely changed the breed. He's made Europe take a whole new look at American horses, and his type has become the type. Although Nijinsky is much different from him, but I think that the Europeans prefer a horse that looks like him.
Well, I was just over at Newstead Farm the other day, and they seem to prefer him. They've got Larita. They've got they know they have a world record filly. That's going to go through Saratoga. What do you got here? That's a world record to beat their world record.
I've got the colt that will beat the colt record. I think he's by Northern Dancer out of Belade, so he's a half brother to. He's a full brother to the filly we sold last year for a record $2.5 million. He's a half brother to Devil's Bag and a half brother to Glorious Song. Well,
I got a little problem with you and Newstead. Belade sounds like she's going to be the broodmare of the year. Over here, I would think so, huh?
I would think on the strength of Devil's Bag and the fact that she also had a Glorious Song.
Well, over there, they think it's Kittiwake. So you can imagine their sentiment. She's had 3 stakes winners this year, including Miss Oceana. But they have a Northern Dancer filly that's just outstanding. And you have the Northern Dancer colt that's just outstanding.
And then I've got a filly over there. I'll give him a run for the money as a filly by Northern Dancer out of the South Ocean, a full sister to Stormbird. And she is a crackerjack.
Well, there's some action coming up as to who's going to get the top. But the whole action is between Northern Dancer's offspring, so... As we look at the man, there's no problem.
He really looks magnificent for a horse of his age, doesn't he?
He really does. I remember we've been showing some of his races on the video magazine just to be sure they're saved and distributed. We don't want to forget, besides what a great sire, what a great racehorse he was.
That's right. People kind of forget the fact that when he lost the Belmont, and then he only had one more race after that, which was in the Queen's Plate. And people quickly forget about horses. And then he went to Canada and stood up there a couple of years, and that's pretty far out. Well, and, it wasn't until Nijinsky came along that people began to suspect or realize what a super horse he was. He's a beautifully balanced horse. He's not very big from a standpoint of he's not very tall, but he's a long horse, if you notice how long he is.
I heard you almost sold Halo because he was a cribber. What's the story?
Well, no, actually, that's what enabled us to get him, was because he is supposed to have been a cribber, and We had had good luck buying horses from Charles Engelhart. This horse had been bought by Engelhart as a yearling, and at that time he was buying all the top yearlings at the sale, and he was the one that really was the first to prove that it was creditable to go and buy the top yearlings out of the sale and make it work. And one of them was Halo, who was by Hail to Reason out of Cosma, a magnificent pedigree, and he was a good racehorse. And then he had been sold to Ireland, or England. And when he arrived over there, they said he was a cribber. They hadn't been told he was a cribber, and they not only wanted to negate the sale, but they wanted to sue everybody involved for. So he was brought back and wound up back in Englehart's racing stable. So he raced a couple of times, showed a lot of ability, and he's come back. And since we'd had such good luck with Tenham, we went back to Mr. I think Engelhart was dead at the time. We went back to his wife and asked if Halo was for sale. And so they said yes, they wanted $1 million for it. So we said, okay, we'll buy it.
Well, here he is today, worth $30 million.
That's right.
Here we got a guy, this is what, SMARTEN? This is where everybody thought Woody was such a genius.
That's right. Woody did a magnificent job in managing this horse. He won, I think it was 5 derbies, and primarily by ducking Spectacular Bid. I mean, this is a real good, honest little horse, but he wasn't a Spectacular Bid, who is one of the great horses we probably had race around here in the last decade or so. He won, and when he was through racing, Jim Ryan, who owned him, his Rye Hill, he asked us if we were interested in the horse, and I always liked Cyan, his sire, and he looked like he would fit onto our program, so we made a deal, and we syndicated him. And he's first crop of racing this year, and he's got out, he's among the 10 leading first crop stallions. He's one of the leading 2-year-old sires. He had the horse Smart and Slick, who won the Sapling, and then
just missed at Arlington Park.
Missed at Arlington Park and dropped dead right after the race. And then he also had a pretty good stakes winner in Italy, so he's made a really a good start. Anytime
a young horse like him starts out with a Grade 1 winner, there's a bright future. I know the shares went from about 75 to 160.
That's right.
So.
And we have a variety of horses here, but he fits in kind of the Northern Dancer mold. He's not too big. He's but a beautifully balanced horse, and he was tough.
He seems broader than Cyan. You'd expect the Cyans to be narrow. A lot of them were. Of course, he isn't.
But he is, he's made a tremendous start, and I think that he's going to keep it up, and hopefully that he does as well as Halo and some of the rest of them. This is Gregorian.
He seems to be pretty good size.
That's right. Gregorian is a little bit out of the normal pattern that we use. He's a very big horse, a very beautifully balanced horse, a horse with a tremendous pedigree. He's by Graustark out of Natashka, who was a broodmare of the years, had about 5 or 6 stakes winners. And this horse, the Vincent O'Brien and Sangster bought him as a yearling, and he showed a tremendous amount of promise as a 2-year-old. As a matter of fact, Vincent thought he would be his best 3-year-old. He was going to be his classic horse. And he ran once as a 3-year-old, and he got sick and missed the whole 3-year-old season. And then he came back as a 4-year-old, and he raced very well. He won the Joe McGrath, which is a Grade 1 race in Ireland. He was 3rd in the King George and Queen Elizabeth. And it was Vincent pretty much that convinced us that we should stand him, because he said his size, but he's beautifully balanced, and he said that he thought the size would help, because there's a tendency, I think, in breeding thoroughbreds, that if you're not careful, they'll get smaller and smaller on you until pretty soon you're breeding a bunch of ponies. And especially when when you're dealing with a horse like Northern Dancer, who people think is small. He's really not that small. He's not very tall, but he's a pretty good size horse. But we thought it would be that this horse could inject some size into our breeding, and his first crop are yearlings, and they've sold very well. He gets a pretty nice kind of horse. So I'm quite optimistic about him. I think he's going to be a good stallion, and I think he's going to inject some of that size into our breeding. That
well, Graustark is one of the most physically tremendous horses that there is.
That's right. He was a great big horse. Now Natashka, who doesn't really get that big a horse, because we had Truly Bound, who was by In Reality, which is kind of a small horse, and Truly Bound is kind of on the small side. So this horse takes more after the Graustark.
Well, we hope he joins Key to the Mint and the Graustark crew.
He's a very attractive horse. This is Master Willie.
This is some new blood for America.
This is strictly an outcross. He has no Nearco blood in him. He's pretty much a Hyperion, although he's a little bit bigger than a lot of Hyperions. This was a tough horse.
Well, he doesn't have the long pasterns you might see with a Hyperion.
That's right, and he's got a kind of a strange rear end on him, but that comes from his mother and Centricon. She was, Centricon, and she has that kind of a strange rear end on him. This horse was tough. He won more money in England than any horse that ever raced exclusively in England. He was second in the Derby, and probably was the best horse that day. But about a week or 10 days before the race, he got some hay lodged in his throat, and fortunately the trainer's house is right next to the barn where he was in England, and he overheard this horse making this gagging noise, and he rushed out, and they were able to get the straw out of his throat before he choked to death. But consequently, he missed a work, and when he came to the Derby, he was probably a work short, and he just missed catching henbit.
Well, the most successful cross in England when they do studies is crossing Hyperion and Nearco, and
but we think that this can work very well with. We have so much Nearco Nazrula blood in North America that you always have to be on the outlook for outcrosses if you're going to maintain the vitality of your breeding operation. And as I say, this horse was tough, and we think that he could really do what we want to do in getting an outcross and a different kind of horse. You'll notice he's got 4 white legs out. We're getting a lot of 4 white-legged horses that are not supposed to be what you want, but the way we're going, we're going to have all white, 4 white legs. That'll be one of our trademarks.
Well, Larita has 4 white ones, if I'm not mistaken, and she seems to work just fine with her.
So this horse has got him. The Minstrel's got him.
I guess we're all going to have to learn to live with them.
That's right. This is a very kind horse. He's a very, and even though he was a real tough competitor, he's really a joy to be around, right?
He came home pretty clean.
But that's one thing that you'll notice about horses that have campaigned in Europe and hard campaigns like this horse had, the Minstrel had, and how clean-legged they are as compared to American horses. Our racetracks are really tough on our horses.
I guess when you can bring one home clean-legged like that from an American track, he was made of steel.
That's right. This is the newest horse that we've added to our stallion group here, is Caveat, the winner this year of the Belmont Stakes.
Of course, the bold bit of bloodline is tremendous.
That's right. Although it goes back through Bold Ruler and Nazrule and so forth. It's far enough removed. Cannonade is from the same family as Halo. This horse is out of a mare by the Axe, who was a superior racehorse and a good outcross. And he was a good racehorse, and probably, I mean, in our view, would have been the champion 3-year-old if he hadn't injured himself in the Belmont, which was a fantastic race. The way the determination that he showed to come through on the inside after all that intimidation, but it was his undoing. That's where he injured himself. And
well, seeing Slew of Gold in the fall and realizing that this horse beat him in the Belmont, it's hard to really determine just how good he is.
That's right. I think this horse beat Slew of Gold every time they met.
One nice thing about him, of course, any horse that has a sudden turn of acceleration, even though they do it in a 1.5 mile race, they say those horses are very fast.
That's right, and then this horse really showed it in the Belmont, because it was just both his determination and his speed that Pink Eye had that much horse that when he asked him that he could go through that hole and overcome the intimidation and the bumping.
Well, 2 horses have won the Belmont in faster time. That's Secretariat and Gallant Man, and that's about it. I think his time was even faster than Affirmed and Aladar, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, and it was a good top class race, and which indicated he was a top class horse.
That shows you he'd have been tough in the Belmont in any year.
That's right. And he's a nice type horse. He's not too big. He's just the right size, and except for his injury, he's a very clean-legged horse. And he raced hard. Took him a little while to really get him straightened around, but his races from the Derby on, in which he was 3rd and had some problems in it, were all first class.
Well, any horse that develops quickly to get into the classics is a fast-developing horse, so he could come with horses very quickly in his career.
Oh, I think so. I think this horse could be a very successful horse.
25 million worth of assert.
That's right. This is one of the most beautiful moving horses you'll ever want to see. He just moves, just flows, and to see him move in the paddock, it's really a joy. And he was the same way when he was racing. After he won the Benson and Hedges Gold Cup, Phil Bull, who is one of the best observers of racing in Europe, he puts out that time form which rates every horse that races in England and Ireland and a lot of the horses that race in France. He told his crew that this was the best moving horse he had ever seen. He had tremendous acceleration. He won the French Derby, the Irish Derby, the Benson and Hedges race. Probably should have won the King George and Queen Elizabeth, but David O'Brien, who trained him, and the rider thought that they had misjudged the field and their strategy didn't work, and they thought all they had to do was beat the front runners, and they went to the lead and thought everything was over, and the other horse come through on the inside and just nailed him right on the wire. But we were very attracted to him because of although we're going back to the Northern Dancer line, he's by Be My Guest, who is by Northern Dancer, and but he's a complete outcross on the bottom side. His mother also produced a French Derby winner in Bicala, and
I saw him race against Bicala once. He beat
his brother. And but Sangster and O'Brien were very high on him, but the fact they had Be My Guest, they also had a couple of other Northern Dancer line horses to retire to stud, Carillon, and who won the
won the French Derby. I think he won the French Derby.
Yeah, that's right. Carillon won the French Derby this year.
Right.
They had him to retire, and so they were willing to give this horse up, and we syndicated him for $25 million, and we're rather excited about what his first foals are going to look like this year, or next year.
He looks a little more fine-boned than some of the other ones that you've shown us.
That's right. And he's a horse a little bit more on the leg than some of the others.
I like him.
But oh, what a mover. You would love him in the field.
I wouldn't mind loving him in the breeding shed. I'm just a little light the cash it takes to get to him.
But he is a gorgeous horse. And he's a horse that is going to improve physically as he matures. Because right now he's kind of a high withered horse. That when he fills in there, he is going to be a magnificent horse.
I have some questions on this horse. Of course, the Minstrel is a fantastic success. A lot of it's coming in Europe. It seems like the Europeans allowed him to come over here only to take everything back over there.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we seeing more of the Minstrel in North America?
Well, I think the reason for that is that he had such tremendous success in Europe as a racehorse. He came along when the mystique of Northern Dancer was gaining, and also at the time when the Europeans and the Arabs were becoming dominant in the market, and consequently these horses have been the Minstrels have been tremendously popular, and they're the only ones that could afford to buy them. So not only did most of the ones that were sold be bought by Europeans or Arabs to race in Europe, but also a number of probably a good portion of the syndicate that owns him, the breeders, are Europeans, and they breed them and take them over there to race. And so his representation in North America has been virtually none, because they've all gone abroad.
Well, Legrand came here for a little tour in the deep going at the Man of War, and really gave a good account of himself.
He was third, and then Chem won the Laurel and was second in a good race in New York. And but I think almost all of the ones that we bred by him have gone to Europe. But he's a magnificent horse. I just love this horse. There's a lot of Northern Dancer about him. He's although he's a little more square, where Northern Dancer is more of a rectangle. But here again, you see this horse won the Epsom Derby. He won the Irish Derby. He won the King George and Queen Elizabeth Stakes, and he had a hard campaign. And this horse was tough too. He won he got beat in the 2,000 guineas, and Vincent O'Brien was very reluctant to run him in the Derby. And it was Lester Piggott that convinced him. He said, "Run this horse in the Derby, he'll win it." And he won it just on sheer determination. And you look at him, he's clean as can be. He looks like the day he was born. There's not a blemish on any of his four legs. And he's just a magnificent little horse. He's little, but he's not little.
He's not tall, but he sure seems to have enough weight.
But you notice he's almost square. And his muscling and everything is just like his sire.
Well, this has been a fabulous female family for you. You had the two giants out of here.
Oh, that's right. His mother, Fleur, was by Victoria Park out of Flaming Page, and Flaming Page was the dam of Nijinsky, and also Minsky, who was a champion. And Fleur was a lot better than her racing record showed. She ran in the Summer Stakes, which is a mile grass race for 2-year-olds in Fort Erie, and it was against colts, and it was on the grass. And as she came through the stretch for the first time, she got kind of crowded, and she was forced practically into the hedge on the inside, and she recovered from that, and she came on, and she was third. But always after that, she was rather gun shy, and anytime she got in close quarters, she would kind of remember that experience she had, and so her racing record wasn't as good as she herself was. And we put her to stud, and she got the Minstrel, who was, and then unfortunately she also had a foot problem, and it finally reached the point where we had to put her down for humane reasons. So we didn't get very many foals out of her. But and then his granddam, Flaming Page, she was a super mare. She was probably one of the best mares ever bred in Canada. She not only won the Canadian Oaks, but she also won the Queen's Plate. She was second in the Kentucky Oaks, and that was the year that Sir Gaylord got hurt, and everybody was thinking that Cicada would run in the Derby, and instead the Chenrys raced him in the or her in the Kentucky Oaks, and she beat Flaming Page there. And then she got into a speed. After she won the Queen's Plate, she went to Monmouth, and in the Monmouth Oaks, she got in a speed duel with Cicada, and they both got beat by Bramalea.
Who turned out to be all right also.
Yeah, so
shows you how the great fillies have a way of hanging out together.
But Flaming Page was top class, and her first foal was Nijinsky, and then we had Minsky and Fleur, and then she had a foal that had to be cut out of her, and that was the end of Flaming Page as a producer. But we still got her. She hasn't had she's about, let's see, she was foaled in 1958, so she's 25, and she's running around over there. She's just a pensioner. She and old Natalma, the dam of Northern Dancer, she's 26, and they're both pensioners. They just eat grass.
Well, to a good family of horses, to the home of Northern Dancer and friends. Thank you.